Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Campbell Talk. And all this month, happy Pride. And all this month, we've been talking about HIV among Black and Indigenous people of color, as well as Pride. So, anyone um, LGBTQ plus population, individuals, um, allies, and supporters. We love you too. So we're going to talk about what we need to do to um, reduce HIV towards ending the HIV epidemic. And last week was a really powerful conversation. And this week we have none other than Mr. Lorenzo Robertson. And he is going to be on in a few minutes to tell us about his organization, the work that he's doing um, to end the HIV epidemic, and also how that's contributing to building up and lifting up our society and our people. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me tonight.
How are you?
I am well, thank you. How are you doing this evening?
I'm hanging in there.
Good, good.
Awesome. All right, folks. So this is the man of the hour, and so Lorenzo, talk to us for a little bit and tell us about yourself and how did you get into HIV work?
Okay. Well, I'm Lorenzo Robertson. I'm actually a native of the area. I grew up in Pahokee, Florida, so I'm a Floridian, and primarily working in the area of HIV. I kind of was thrust upon it many years ago. I was working at a homeless shelter, and one of our clients had HIV, and it was just very challenging because a lot of us weren't very versed in HIV. So therefore it's kind of, we didn't know exactly what to and what not to do. And that gave me that was the impetus that I needed to find out more about HIV. And so that was kind of the start of it. And after that, I got another position at an AIDS respite center. And at the AIDS respite, I became an HIV tester and advocate, and just really going out into the community talking about HIV. And that was kind of my start in how I got involved with HIV in the beginning. And our respite center, we have an area for children as well as adults, and it was really about making sure that people who are living with HIV had a good quality of life. So therefore, we made sure that we took them on trips, field trips. We took them to museums to parks, to the beach, those types of things. And we had food, and we did games, and also we had educational components that were involved as well. So that was one of the things I worked on early on, and then I moved to working with other organizations. I've worked in nonprofits and the health departments for the last 20 plus years, and currently I work for the GEMA Men's Collective, which is an agency I started about 4 years ago. We were doing the GEMA Men's Collective has been around for about 20 years, but in terms of it being a 501c3 and actually going out and garnering grants and programs and that type of stuff, we started that about in 2018. So what we do right now is we do HIV testing, and our target population is the Black heterosexual and Latin community. And we also, transgender is also a part of our population of target. That's primarily because that was the funding that we applied for from the health department. Our organization as an organization, our target population are Black same-gender loving men and those that love and support them. In our organization, we operate under 5 tenets, which are leadership, advocacy, spirituality, relationships, health, and wellness. So everything that we do, we try to incorporate those things into our programs and programming that we do in the community. And so we've been doing, we also do a conference biannually. So our next one will be in 2023. And at that conference, we bring in speakers and guests who can actually address those topics, because what we like to do is have all of our topics be around leadership, advocacy, spirituality, relationships, health, and wellness, but also have that woven into being Black same gender loving men. So we really want that to be a part of everything that happens with the organization.
That's awesome. Wow, you guys are doing a lot.
We're trying.
And you know what? Like, I mean, I have been to a couple of events hosted and planned and presented by Ujima, and I have to tell you, those events are, I don't know, it's like your mental, physical, spiritual, social, sexual, like all of your well-being just kind of like come together in one space. And sometimes you're just leaving there like, that's a word, that's a message. Like you just
Mhm.
feel as if you've just been, I don't know, you just feel refreshed.
Yeah.
When you leave, you feel like you can take on like your next phase without having any issues. Um,
Yeah. A lot of people who've come to our conference, they say it's like a revival. When they leave, they feel rejuvenated. They feel like this is something that they needed to really get replenished and get re-energized to really go back into their community to do work. And I think one of the times we did our conference in West Palm Beach, I guess it was really overwhelming and very powerful. One of the men that attended, because in his regular everyday work and in his community, he's not open about his sexuality, and he was just so overwhelmed and so just exuberant about the fact that he was in an environment that he could be himself and he didn't have to look over his shoulder. So he could just be a Black gay man in an environment. And he was in tears when he was sharing that with us. And I just thought it was just such a powerful moment, because we recognize that so many people don't have the opportunities to be themselves openly. A lot of us take it for granted who live our lives openly, but people who are not, it is a challenge to actually be able to be your authentic self and to show up as you want to show up all the time. And I think that that's one of the things that our conference does, is really to make sure that people are given an opportunity to present themselves in their authentic and truest self, truest light.
that's real awesome. How do you handle then? Because so you mentioned you often use SGL. So let's tell people
Yeah,
what
let's go
SGL
there.
is.
Yeah, basically, I use same gender loving men because I'm not necessarily a part of the gay community per se. In terms of the biology, I am gay, but in terms of my aesthetics and who I am as a man, I really prefer to look at my race, my ethnicity first and foremost, and that's where I am initially, and my sexuality is secondary. So therefore, when I say same gender loving men, it's really about making sure that what I'm doing and who I am is really about exploring those aspects of just being a man and being a man who loves other men. And again, when you say it to people, they'll ask you the question, like, you say same gender, what does that mean? And I'll say, well, it's men who like other men who love other men who have sex with other men, the whole range of that. But the whole thing is really about making sure that you are really being authentic about who you are as a person.
That's awesome. All right. So now, so how do you um help people to deal with the stigma of being who they are?
The only thing I can tell people is you have to lead by example, and you have to live your life, openly, authentically, and just shining who you are and not shying away from it. And I think that really helps other people, because they can see that you are able to live your life authentically. And I think it gives other people permission sometimes that maybe I can do that as well, because this person is doing it, they're living their life, they're same gender loving man at work, at church, at wherever wherever they are. This is who they are. They're not necessarily saying that they're someone different. And so I think for me, it's really about making sure that you're always making sure that you are presenting yourself in an authentic way. You're also, when you hear things that are disparaging about people who are same gender loving men, you address it, you don't let it go. And just making sure that with the people that are around you as well, that they are understanding of who you are as a man, who you are as a being, and also that you are here to be respected. And I think the whole thing is that sometimes we've been taught, and because when we were growing up, sometimes you heard negative and disparaging remarks about people who were gay, and you didn't know what to say. You were just kind of like, you didn't say anything. But I think as you grow older, especially with the younger generation, they're very vocal about who they are, and they're understanding their sexuality at much earlier ages. And not necessarily understanding, but they're more open about it, being open and authentic and open about who they are publicly, as opposed to some of us when we were growing up. We were gay, but we just kind of hid it, and we didn't let people know that we were. We were just kind of trying to be as masculine, or as we just tried to blend into the community. We want to be like everybody else, and we didn't necessarily want people to see or recognize our sexuality. But I think it's really about you individually living your life openly, honestly, authentically. And when people see that, it will give them the opportunity to do the same thing. And also it gives people who are not a part of the LGBTQ community, who are our allies, or the ones who don't really understand it, gives them opportunity also to ask questions like, well, what does that mean? And therefore they can look at it from a different perspective after you've had an opportunity to educate them about the LGBTQ community.
Okay, awesome. What? Oh, we have a question.
Okay.
um, how do you feel when someone says they're openly gay, but not to everyone? I am gay, but I don't tell or act like it to everyone.
I mean, I think everyone has their own journey, and and you have to determine when and how and where and who you want to share your authentic self with. I don't think there is one cookie cutter method for everybody. Everybody's going to decide how and when and where to be open about their sexuality. It's really an individual choice, and I applaud anyone who is able to be open about their sexuality with only one person, because that's a big thing to say that to someone, that I am gay, or I'm a man who likes other men, or however you choose to term it. But to actually be able to tell someone that, I mean, I think that takes a lot of courage.
I wish that I had this term when I first came out, because maybe it was there, I just didn't know. I'm just because like I'm Caribbean born, so you know how that goes in the Caribbean. And so like I used to hang out with folks and they're like, "Oh, you're gay, but you just don't want to admit it." And I was like, "No, I know that I'm gay, but
Like,
I
I
just
know
say that I don't like to say that I'm gay." And it was just so confusing. And I mean, I didn't know about SGL at the time, because I would have
yeah,
definitely used that one.
yeah, yeah,
But
and you.
and I had to like explain to a couple of folks and say, like, saying this could get you beaten up, can get you killed, can get you be discriminated against or violence against you. So coming here in a space where I can be who I am, why would I then take that term and then apply it to myself? And so it took a very long time before I accepted that as a term that I can use to reference in reference to myself. But it's a challenge, particular for Caribbean men, uh,
Mhm.
because the circumstances are different, and they don't have as much protection or rights as we do here and in other places. So that can definitely be a challenge. And I think with the traveling back and forth between like here, the Caribbean, and other places, we can see a lot of that. So, how is Ujima positioning itself, or how is Ujima like helping to create those bridges?
Well, actually, we have two projects that we're working on currently. One is an anthology that we're working on. The anthology is really about how you, as an individual, got to a point that you were open about your sexuality. It's really about sharing those stories with other people, because, again, it goes back to, if I can read, hear, see someone else living their truth, then that may give me to give me the opportunity to think that I can live my life authentically and openly as well. And so we're doing an anthology. It's going to be we're going to get local writers. I got a lot of people who indicated they're interested in participating. They're going to share their stories, and we're going to put it together. And then we're going to do a reception. We're going to invite community members into that space, and each person who has contributed to the book, they'll have an opportunity to have like their own little book signing. because everybody will have their book, and you'll have your the parts of the book that's about you, and you'll be able to sign it, or whatever you choose to do with the person. But people will be able to, and we'll give people an opportunity that night to share their stories as well. And I think those are the type of that's one of the things that we do to really try to get people to look at themselves from a different perspective. And we're doing another program, which is a social justice project that we got funded to do. And the social justice project is called Brothers. And we call it Brothers because, not to be colloquial or anything like that, but Brothers is an acronym, and it's brothers reaching out to help another son. So therefore, it's really about making sure that we, as Black same gender loving men, we're there for our brothers as well. And with that social justice project, a part of it is really about educating the community about Black same gender loving men from the historical context as to who they were and all the contributions that we've made as Black same gender loving men, that many people may not even be aware that these were gay men. So a part of it is to educate the community and educate Black gay men about that. And the other part of it is we're going to have a community conversation or a town hall meeting to really address some of the issues around Black same gender loving men who have been discriminated against in different areas, and for them to be able to share those discriminatory stories so we can hear it and actually be able to hear and address those stories, and how we can move forward, and how we can actually support our brothers who may have been discriminated against and maybe they are still traumatized from that, but really giving them an opportunity to be in an open and safe space to be able to share their stories. So those are two things that we're working on currently to really try to explore and to expand our reach. And another thing is that we have a protege project, which is a mentoring program. And that's for young Black same gender loving men between the ages of 18 and 34 are our proteges, and our mentors are 35 and older. So we're in the process now of getting new members or new proteges and new mentors to pair them up, so therefore they can build those relationships. It's really about the mentoring program is really a reciprocal intergenerational type program, because we really want the younger men to learn from the older men, and older men to learn from the younger guys as well, because many younger men, they can teach men about technology and a lot of things that they may not be savvy in. And then the older men, they can teach, the younger guys about life and how it was during the early years when it wasn't as easy to be out and open about your sexuality.
Yeah, and even teaches them and support them in this process of how to be safe, and how to kind of like find themselves in a space where you're pulled in so many different directions.
Right. And a part of it is also it's building that intergenerational, that family that we've lost, because especially during the 80s, we lost so many Black gay men to AIDS. And I think that there's a void there, and there's a lot of people who didn't have an opportunity to have mentors because they were dead. So therefore this is an opportunity to kind of start building those type of relationships again, whereas you can have a big brother or uncle or whomever, however you choose to phrase it, but it's a person that you can use as a role model, a sounding board, to really be able to address things that are going on in your life. And they can give you some perspectives that you may not have thought of, because they've gone through different atrocities as, Black gay men in the 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, those types of things. And the things that they may have experienced are things that you may not experience now. But, unfortunately, the things that they experienced then, or we're still experiencing a lot of those things today as well. The discrimination is still real. The stigma is still real. All the things that have happened before, gay bashing, all those things that happened before, they're still happening now.
Yeah. So I don't want to lose this moment, but you did mention that you were doing several different projects, and I
Mhm.
just wanted to make sure that people who are interested in learning more about those projects, and whether they can be a part of it or attend those events, how can they find you?
Well, we have our website. You can go to our website. It's ujimamen.net. And also, we are on Facebook and Twitter. So, therefore, we have a presence there as well. So, we put all of our information. If we're having a project, we'll put it on Facebook, as well as we have a Facebook, also a Protege Project Facebook page as well. So, we have different ways of getting our information out into the community. And we do email blasts and those types of things to get the community to be involved and engaged with activities that we're participating in, that we're sponsoring, or that we're engaging in throughout the year.
Okay. Thank you. We'll leave that information scrolling on the bottom of the screen. So you'll have it. It'll be cemented in this video on
That's
Facebook
fine.
out there in the universe. So and as always, if something clicks after watching this and you just forget that the number is scrolling down there or that you just inbox me and we'll make sure you have the information. As an elder in the SGL community, what advice would you have for those who aspire to start organizations or projects in service to Black, Indigenous people of color, or LGBTQ plus population or community?
I would just say if it's something that you're really truly interested in pursuing, I would start maybe with a small project initially just to see how it works, see how my energy and how it interfaces with the community and what type of community support I get for that project as well. Because you have to remember you can't do a lot of these things by yourself. You do need community support. You need other people that will be a part of your planning body or a part of the community that's going to come to the event, but just making sure that you also surround yourself with people who are like-minded, who are going to also push you, propel you, and also support you in your endeavors in terms of doing projects. Because it's nothing worse than trying to do a project and all the people around you are like, oh, it's not going to happen, child. They're not giving you the support. And,
Right.
so therefore you have to surround yourself with people that are going to be supportive of your dreams and your goals and your desires, because that's sometimes we don't have our biological family. We have to have our chosen family who can support our dreams sometimes. But just basically making sure that that you're doing it for the reason that's truest into your heart, and that you're trying to do something that's going to be beneficial for the community. And then when you are doing that, making sure that when you present it to the community, that you're doing it for me, it's a place of love, it's a place of respect, it's a place of honor our people and the struggles that have happened before, and also the future and the brightness that we can execute in the future as well.
Okay. So we have someone in the comment who's asked
Mhm.
who it's more of like a statement.
Oh, okay.
um, uh, Oh, so one of the question was about gay men, specifically black gay men, being judgmental, and
Hmm.
so I don't know if that's something that you want to speak to. Like, how do we address that amongst ourselves?
I mean, we're human, and people are they are. You have to really determine what it is in terms of why you're saying the things that you're saying, and getting to the point of understanding who you are as a man or woman or whomever you are. And it's really about your own level of how you want to present yourself to the world. Because and different people choose to use certain terminology, and they may say, this is my friend, this is my sister, this is my girl, whatever. And if that's how you choose to communicate with your friends, that is your choice. And it doesn't diminish you as a man. It doesn't diminish anything like that. And I think that we have to get away from the fact that everyone has the right to present themselves as they see fit in the world. You may not agree with it, you may not think that it's appropriate, but it's appropriate for that individual, and we all should respect their wishes and desires to be who and present themselves to the world how they choose to. And I can't make a decision or determine how you can present yourself to the world. That's solely your choice. Now, if can I sit back and judge you? Of course I can. But what is the benefit of that? It doesn't benefit anyone. If there's some reason as to why I think that you're doing something is not an appropriate thing, I may want to talk to you about that, because of the inappropriateness of what you're doing, which is something different than judging you. I mean, judgment is like we are human, though. We do judge people. That's just a part of human nature. Some people judge more, some people judge less. It just depends on the individual. But I think we all should have the right to present ourselves to the world how we choose to, and not feel that someone else has the right to tell us that we shouldn't walk a certain way, we shouldn't speak a certain way, we shouldn't use our hands a certain way. You have to do and live your life the best way that you can for yourself, and not allow other people to dictate to you and tell you how to live your life.
Message.
you know, that's,
I don't know what side of the screen you're on right now, but message. And so it's important. So like, let's talk a little bit about um this HIV epidemic. We're in a big push right now to end the HIV epidemic. So what do you think it's going to take for us to be able to end the HIV epidemic? Um, for
Yeah, if I can answer that.
everyone, $1 million answers here.
Yeah.
Like with this answer that he's about to give y'all, we're about to like end HIV. Like,
We're gonna shut it down. No, I mean, no, really, I think that we as a people, especially Black people and Black same gender loving men and Black people in the LGBTQ community, I think we have to start to look at HIV from a perspective that it is something that is manageable and treatable. So therefore, if you get it, it's a part of that. But we also have to get to a point of that we're talking about it publicly. Even though, HIV has been around, 35, 40 years, we in the Black community still don't talk about it. We don't address it. We are not as vocal about HIV as we are about other things. Now we start talking about the NBA finals. We talk about the Super Bowl. Oh my God, everybody in the world has comments, conversation. You have in-depth conversations about it. But we start talking about HIV, it's almost, they turn a deaf ear to it. They don't talk about it. I think a part of it is that if we start to talk about HIV, start to address it from a different perspective, educate our community about U equals U, treatment as prevention, about PrEP, all these things that are preventatives in our community. And I think those are the type of things that we don't do enough of in our community. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of media push around those areas in Black communities.
mm,
And we do need to hear more about that. And we need to have more Black people who are on PrEP to actually talk about it. PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis, is which a medication that you can take that will stop the replication of HIV if it's entered into your system, but you have to take it on a daily basis. But those are the things that we don't talk about enough in our community. Especially, we should be able to talk about HIV at church. Go to the preacher talks about everything else under the sun, but a lot of them, they don't talk about HIV. And I think if we've had all leaders in the Black community to talk about HIV from the same perspective, they talk about what's near and dear to their hearts, I think it will have more impact on our community, and we'll be able to talk about it. We'll be able to start to address it from a real perspective as to how we can make sure that, are we done?
no, we're
Oh,
here.
okay, because my thing just popped off. My bad. Um, no, but if we were able to talk about it from that perspective, just really having all of our community members to talk about it openly and not continuously think that HIV, oh, it's their disease, it's the gay people. And we have to move ourselves from that as well. It's something that has been impacting Black people since the impetus of HIV. It's not just all of a sudden Black people became the face of it like 20 years later. We were a part of we were people being impacted with HIV many, many years ago. There were children that were being born with HIV. So therefore there were Black women who were living with HIV. So, but we have not talked about it from a perspective that this is something that's impacting our community. We'll talk about it, sporadically, but we don't talk about it enough to really get the community as a whole behind it. And many people thought when Magic Johnson came out and told everybody that he was living with HIV, that was going to have a great push in terms of, Black men, Black people to really go out and make sure that your HIV status, you get tested, you talk about it. And it did for maybe a year, but then after that, it's like he's a celebrity, he's still involved in HIV, but it hasn't really had a great push in terms of getting people interested, involved, in getting themselves tested to know their HIV status, because it's like 2022. We have so much information about HIV. People shouldn't even still be becoming HIV positive, because based on all the information that's out there, there's no reason why people should be acquiring HIV now. But they are, and that's the sad part. And many of those people look like me and you. They're the people of color.
Right. Okay.
And I think the other thing, sorry, I think the other
Oh,
thing
yeah,
is
go
that we
ahead,
can get,
go ahead.
huh?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think the other thing, if we can get some of the, because there are these influencers, there's the celebrities, and all these other people that people look up to and they listen. If we can get some of those people involved in HIV in terms of really talking about it, getting tested, having HIV testing at their concerts, their events, their functions, all those types of things. making it more just like a mainstream thing in the Black community, as it's not a once in a while we may talk about HIV, or we have to hide it, or we're going to do this health fair. It's really about trying to get people tested for HIV, but we're going to call it a health fair because if we say HIV, people won't want, they don't want to show up. All those types of things are things that we still need to address in the Black community as to why we're still having these issues with HIV, 30 plus years later.
That is. Do you think that um, the lack of representation is having a greater impact in why we haven't yet crossed like a threshold and saying, all right, our rates are either like slowed, not or slow to stopping, or we're kind of like not really seeing, because we're only, black folks only make up like 13% of the US population, but yet still
Right.
we're like nearly or just about half of all of the HIV infection rates in the country. So how come 13% of the people is not responsible for, but how come 13% of the people represents half
Mm.
of that? That's a huge statistics. And I think, like you mentioned, when HIV was out in the 80s, they called it, but when we first kind of like started having those public conversations, they
Right.
called it a bunch of different things. And I think it
Right.
puts so much stigma on those groups because it became like a blame game. And
Hmm.
then it was just kind of like, oh, well, it's the gays, it's the Haitian, it's the this, it's the that. And then
Right.
eventually, folks kind of was like, well, if you're not gay, you go to church and you're this and that and that. And I think that, then you won't get it because, you're not gay, so you won't get it. And I think
Right.
a lot of people heard that and was like, oh, it's a gay man's disease. I'm not gay, so I'm good.
Yeah.
And didn't understand transmission and modes of transmission. And people started getting infected with HIV, and it was like, okay, what do you do when you need blood? Like,
Right. Exactly.
what
Exactly.
do you do when
No,
you're sharing needles? Like, it's just all of these different things. So I think a lot of that contributed to kind of like where we have been, where we kind of like are, and if we
yeah.
don't do anything about it, where we'll continue to be going.
Yeah. And I think that was the thing when HIV first became, a part of the national conversation. We as Black people were not a part of that conversation from the point of it became these white gay men who were at the White House. They were the white gay men who were at Congress. There were not Black people involved in those, publicly involved in a lot of those conversations. And so when they talked about HIV, it was really about white gay men, and they became the face of HIV. And that's what most people thought HIV was about, because community members continuously said, it's a gay man's disease. And so when you continuously hear that in the Black community, that's all we heard that, and we ran with it, because again, we don't want to necessarily address all the other issues and other things that we can do to actually combat HIV. So it's easier just to act as though it doesn't impact me because I'm not gay. I'm not a white gay man. I'm not all the things that people have said in terms of how you're going to acquire HIV. And so, and we perpetuated that same stigma about HIV. We continue to talk about it from that perspective, and we have not moved beyond it's their disease. And I think that's a part of it as well. We have in pockets, but we haven't collectively as a Black people in the United States. We have not done that. And I think that's what we need to do, to really talk about it from an open, honest perspective, that people that live with HIV, the richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor, and everything in between, we're all, everyone's living with something, but there are people that are living with HIV in all spectrums. And we just need to have more people who are going to be open and honest about it, that they are living with HIV. So therefore, people could say, "Oh, if Mr. Johnson got it, oh, I might could get it too." But Mr. Johnson's married with 3 kids, and all the traditional trappings. If you had all these things in your life, then you weren't going to get HIV, because you're not the stereotype that HIV impacts.
Hmm.
And I think that's the other part that we have to really talk about it from those perspectives. And I don't know what we're going to do. I just know that we continue to have the same issue. These are the same conversation that we've been having for the last 30 plus years about HIV amongst ourselves in our communities about Black people. And we're still having the same same conversations.
Well, I mean, so one of the conversations that we kind of like notice, and almost like a reoccurring theme, is that, you know, when HIV among like white folks, they got behind that and they kind of like pushed for what they needed to make it
Mhm.
happen. And then you had black and brown people, and so the brown people were like, okay, wait a minute, we need this in our languages, so this way we can understand it. We
Right.
need it in the way how we see our culture. And so what you saw happen for like Hispanics and Latinos is that their rates kind of like got better.
Right.
Then, you know, when you look at black folks, you see historically we haven't really been able to take on decision making roles and have decision making authority over our own policies, our
Yeah.
own procedures, our own funding to make sure that it happens. And there are people out there who are not, you know, black or not Hispanic, Latinos, who are really doing awesome work. So we're not, you know, we're not
Oh
talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah.
What we need to talk about is that how, you know, it's not just okay to hire a bunch of black and brown people just to be on the ground floor.
Right.
here, here you go. You know, be busy making this happen. We need to also make sure that when you look from the top down, that black folks are represented along all the way from the top down, but also in decision making positions. So you can make decisions and say, this will work for my community or this won't work for my community, or even be an advocate of saying, this is why we need to make sure that we have representation. This is why we need to make sure we go to our community and have these dialogues. So this way we can do and really get real solutions and
Hmm.
have real outcomes.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, so I guess my thing is that we've done, not necessarily that we've been in positions of power across all these spectrums, but there have been so many programs and projects and initiatives that were about and for Black people. And some of them they were implemented in different communities. And initially they were phenomenal. You know, they had great impact on the community, and then it fizzles out. And I don't know, I'm not sure exactly why they fizzle out, but they have done that in the past. Or the funding ends, and when the funding ends, people stop doing the work. The work stops, and then has a negative impact on us as a people. Now our rates are going back up. You know, so it's all those types of things. Whereas we are dependent upon those entities and those different funding streams, all these other things. But we also need to look at, like, there was a time when HIV was impacting our communities. Many organizations, they were filled with volunteers. No one got paid. It was just like, we all know that's what's happening in our community. So we need to go out and get people tested. We need to get condoms out there. And that's what they did. And I think when people were doing it because it was altruistic and they were doing it from their heart, it was a different type of people doing the work. Now people are looking at HIV as a huge business, which it is. And people get into the field because, oh, I can get this, I can go to school, I can all these different things that they're wanting from it. But it's not necessarily about really having an impact on people who are living with HIV or trying to stop other people from acquiring HIV. It becomes this whole other realm of, oh, this could be a stepping stone from where I am now to get to where I want to be. And so I think that has also had played a part in why we're still having a lot of the issues that we're having in the Black community with HIV. I mean, and I think I look at when cancer, many years ago, we did not talk about cancer. It was like it was the big C, it was a word that was whispered. You didn't talk about it. And so, but it was a push from Nancy Reagan when she talked about that she had breast cancer. Oh, was it? No, Betty Ford, that she had breast cancer. So therefore, it became something that you could talk about publicly, and it wasn't an issue. And even though HIV has had various platforms and different spokespersons to talk about it, we just haven't gotten to the point of us all embracing it. And I don't know if the gay component is still a part of it in terms of why people still think it's not something that's going to impact them. I'm not sure, but I know that I think that may still have a part of it because I go back to when HIV was first came out. When we talked about it, it was about those people, those gay people, those promiscuous people, all those dirty people. It was never about Mr. Johnson who goes to church every Sunday, who has 3 kids and his wife, and they have a white picket fence. It wasn't about them. It was about all these other people who were the degenerates of the community. That's how they were always presented. So we still have that mindset about HIV is in our communities as well.
And I think also the people feel like if you're talking about HIV, you can't not talk about how people are having sex. You can't not talk about how to reduce your risk. You can't not talk about, and so I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with having those conversations because for them it's going into territories that either they're unfamiliar with or they're just not comfortable. And what
Yeah,
always comes up a lot is that a lot of folks are uncomfortable with having
right.
conversations about how same gender loving people have sex, or you know or even being just having that conversation as a whole. And I'm like, it's really simple. Just talk. If
Yeah,
you understand, listen, ask questions. How else are you going to learn and grow? Like it's
yeah. I think we still have that. Well, just in general in the Black community. I mean, I use myself as an example in terms of my sex talk from my father. My sex talk was don't get her pregnant. That was the whole conversation. It wasn't about anything else. It wasn't about using a condom. It was nothing else. That was the whole conversation. So there was an assumption that my father had that I already knew about sex, if I did or didn't, but he did not know definitively what I knew about sex. His only concern was I did not get someone pregnant, but he did not give me any other information about how that worked or nothing else was shared from my father outside of don't get her pregnant. That was the whole conversation. And I think so many other people have that type of conversation or no conversation at all. And I think that's the other part of it. You're right. Many parents are very uncomfortable talking about sex
yeah.
because they didn't come from a household where their parents talked about sex. They didn't talk. Girls didn't know that. Some girls didn't even know that they were going to have a menstrual cycle. They at school and they're bleeding. They're like, "Oh my God, what's going on? I'm dying," because no one has talked to them about it. It's just the things that we need to talk about our bodies, especially with our children. They're everyday things that they're going to experience, and you need to talk to them and prepare them to actually have open and honest conversation with them about sex, sexuality, all those things that are going to impact them at some point in their life. But a lot of parents are very uncomfortable talking about sex. We don't talk about it because sex is dirty, it's nasty, all this other stuff. Because that's a lot of times that's what we've been taught, and so it becomes challenging that at some point now we want to talk about it openly and honestly. But in the back of my mind, it's nasty and it's dirty. So
But oh my, that's a whole nother unpack. Uh,
right.
I did have a comment slash and question. People living with HIV remain people living with HIV remain silent. I have HIV and I don't tell anyone, but I am not silent. Should I speak up more or speak when I feel comfortable with saying it?
I think you have to feel comfortable saying it. I mean, I'm living with HIV. I mean, I wrote about it. I've talked about it. I've done presentations. I'm very open about it. But I mean, and I think I was open really pretty much from the beginning because I was in a relationship at the time and my partner just would tell people. So therefore, I didn't have an opportunity sometimes to share it. So therefore, it became a part of the lexicon as to who Lorenzo is. So therefore, I've always kind of been just open about it because it's just been a part of my life. But I think everyone has to share their HIV status when they feel comfortable because it's just like baking a cake. When you put the eggs in and you bake the cake, you can't take the eggs out later and say, "Oh, I don't want to tell people about my HIV status." You told someone it's already out there, and you never know who they're going to tell. They're going to tell you, "I'm not going to tell anyone. It's our secret. It's in the vault." But it may be in the vault with you and that person, but that person has another person that they put things in the vault with as well. And that person has a person, that person has a person. So therefore, when you're sharing your information, just be very mindful in terms of if you're wanting to be totally open about your HIV status, then share it because you never know who's going to share your information with someone else. But I think you have to feel very comfortable when you start to share your HIV status.
Okay. All right. So, we're checking the time here, and we don't want to go too far. But I want to ask you a question now. So, knowing all that you've learned now, what
Mhm.
is? I know there's so many things you'll probably say to your younger self, but what's one thing, or quickly a couple of things that you would have liked to have said to your younger self?
I think I would tell my younger self to be patient. Don't be in such a hurry to be grown. Don't be in such a hurry to find out all these things, because take your time and actually understand what you're doing, who you are as a person, and getting to know myself foremost, first and foremost, who I am. And then I'm bringing the best of me to whatever relationship. And I've learned that over the years, but I wish I had known that when I was younger to really try to understand who I am and what type of man I want to be before I started to do all the things that I've done, in my life.
Okay. And so, what would you say is your biggest motivation for yourself and also for the work that you do?
My biggest motivation is really about the next generation. I don't want another generation of young Black men to have to deal with the stigma, have to deal with discrimination, have to deal with living with HIV. None of those things. That's why the work that I do, I really want to impart to the next generation that you don't have to live with HIV. It's not inevitable that you're going to have HIV. It's not just because the CDC put out this thing that 1 in 2 Black men are going to. You don't have to do that. You can actually try to curb HIV with you. And I think that's the whole thing. If each individual person tried to stop HIV, the spread of HIV with themselves, so therefore, one, they don't acquire it. And then if they're not acquiring it, they can't pass it on to anyone else. So just those are the type of things that really to have a brighter future for the next generation.
Thank you, Lorenzo, for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really
I
had a
really,
great
really
time.
and so much more to unpack. So,
Oh yeah.
you know, we know we there's so many other awareness days and awareness months that are coming up. I know this month we're focusing really on like HIV awareness and also kind of like how do we start to have those conversations that are going to impact Black and Indigenous people of color, but also
Mhm.
LGBTQ plus population. Um, and communities. And so thank you for being on. Thank you for lending your voice to this
Oh,
awareness, to this conversation. And I look forward to having you back on the show again.
I
Uh,
would love to come back.
you know, and so I really appreciate that. And again, folks, you can find more information about Ujima at ujimamen.net, or you
Yep.
can call them at 954-533-9139.
Definitely. And we are always looking for people to volunteer with different things we're working on. We're working on different projects. We need as many hands as possible to help it come to fruition. So if you're interested, you have a creative, you want to or need a creative outlet, contact us. We have opportunities to do those types of things well.
And to our viewers, please continue to like, share, and encourage folks to chime in. We're here on Mondays at 6:30 p.m. And also this week, on Wednesday, we're going to be launching our new campaign called "Follow Me for More Tips." And it's going to be just really cool, some really health facts and some educational moments. And I think that everyone will either get a laugh, a giggle, a tickle, but we want you to just really like and share and continue to post and have discussions. And we'll see you back next Monday at 6:30. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for having me again.
Yes. And guys, the information is there. So if you need anything, definitely reach out. Thanks again for being here. We love and appreciate you.